most people will start out with D-bol, good all-round drug, not overly limited on duration because it will convert to estrogen, so you are getting estrogen. When you start looking at DHTs like Anavar and Winstrol and drugs like that, the problem in part there is that they don't convert to estrogen, and they suppress your natural production. Now, that compound's going to replace your requirement for testosterone, but it's not going to replace your requirement for estrogen.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally, and all of our programming, it's brought to you by you, the people of Patreon. In fact, when you guys have our lead topic of the day, we're going to talk about basically oral-only cycles, the pros and cons of that, what we would set up. Plus, we're going to answer your listener questions. We're also brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. You can get your lab work done by Dave if you're in the UK. We're brought to you by Strom Sports Nutrition if you're in the UK. Great health and performance supplements over there. And we're brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK for additional savings over there and to support our programming. Great, high-quality, third-party tested supplements. Dave, we got a bunch of stuff. We've got steroids in the news. We've got our main topic that I just mentioned. We've got all your listener questions, guys. You guys brought us a bunch of listener questions. If you want to take part in the next show, then comment below, plus comments, likes, all that stuff. It helps to boost our show in the algorithm. But before we get started with that, I have a bone to pick with you, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
You told people that you were like, what did you say? Oh, did you tell everybody that you're giving away free coaching? The first 100 people to send you an email will get free coaching. I didn't even respond to you because I was like, that is such a ridiculous statement, Dave. Guess what? I got people reaching out. I got emails. People were like, do you still have spaces left? Guys, I would love to be able to help you all out. But do you realize if I coached 100 people, that would be more than the people I currently work with. I wouldn't have enough time to... My electricity would get shut off, basically, if I was doing all of that.
Right. Mr. Free Pizza.
Did anybody ever ask you for a free pizza when you got labs?
No, not seriously, but a few people did bring it up, yes. So,
Okay.
How many months, even a year, have you been saying that I will personally go to their house, do their bloods, bring them a pizza? No, I just thought it was time to balance the scales a little bit. That was all.
Well, I'd be happy to help anybody out with coaching, but unfortunately, I do have to charge for my time and my knowledge. That said, I did help a guy out for free this morning. He was like, hey, I have a lot of issues with, he says, I'm a high aromatizer. So I explained to him what beta-glucuronidase is and glucuronidation, and I explained to him some steps he could take to not only help with the aromatization, but also help with the elimination. You know, we've talked about that before. One of the big issues is that if you have high estrogen, it might not even be your aromatization. It might be the fact that you're not eliminating estrogen efficiently. So anyway, that said, I would actually like to say something on this subject, if you don't mind. Go for it.
You get a lot of messages. I get a shitload of messages of people asking for advice.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to help where I can.
Yeah.
But, guys, for both of us, this is how we earn our living.
It's true.
I'm sure you'd be willing as an individual, I don't mean Scott, I mean you as in the listeners, would be willing to help somebody with your skill set that you have from your career, but there's limitations. You wouldn't be willing to help somebody or work for free to some random person who just messaged you on Facebook.
Hey, can you put a new roof on my house?
So,
yeah,
that's a bit extreme, but you get my point. So look, I am more than happy to give people bits of advice. It's not a problem. But I have only so many hours in a day. Yeah. I have to prioritize the people that pay me for that service. And I also have a family that I want to spend time with. They may not want to spend time with me. That's a different conversation. But I want to spend time with them.
Very well said.
Don't take it personal if you don't get a response, or if you get a very short, curt, information-only response. It's not because I can't be asked. It is quite simply because there is not a lot of time, and so I'm giving you the basic facts of what you're asking for, but I don't have the time to sit there and be your friend and talk for half an hour about all the aspects of what you want to discuss. You want that level of information, that comes with a price tag.
Absolutely.
You know? And the other thing is, I'm not Google, and Scott's not Google, so a little bit of common courtesy and, look, can you please, do you mind, goes a long way when requesting free information.
Anyway, we do have some stuff here. In fact, we have steroids in the news, Dave. It's been a while. It's been a while since we had steroids in the news, but right now is a time for the Olympics, right? And when there's Olympics, there's going to be steroid use. Am I right?
You know what? I think this Olympics is going to go down as one of the worst ever.
Why? Why?
Just there's been so much. I mean, swimmers swimming in a polluted river and puking their rings up afterwards because they've basically been poisoned.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Oh, yeah. So they made him swim in the river, and the river's polluted, and they were all throwing their guns up afterwards.
Oh, my God.
Then you've got all the controversy around the boxers, which has been a bit overhyped on several aspects. There's just been complaints about the food, the athlete village. Athletes are actually leaving the village and going into private accommodation to cook and eat the food because apparently all the beds are made of cardboard. Some sort of eco thing, and they're really uncomfortable. And the whole diet is vegan. So all the food catered to the athletes is vegan, and there's athletes saying, look, that's not what I live on, that's not my diet. And they don't have an alternative, so athletes are having to go elsewhere for food. It's apparently a right mess.
That is ridiculous. I didn't hear anything about that, but I did hear about one of the judo guys from, I believe it was Iran, that he had, I guess, 28-year-old guy, tested positive for both Dianabol and for equipoise in a sample taken in Paris on Tuesday. He was due to compete on the following Tuesday. So, it was from Iraq. It was a male judo guy from Iraq. He tested positive for 2 anabolic steroids. I wonder, do you think it's possible that he actually was using Dianabol and equipoise? Because they're both in the same family, right? This strikes me as maybe he was using something in that family that, you know what I mean? It's just weird. Why would you be on EQ going into the fight?
I find EQ a bit of a strange choice from a point of view of detection.
Right.
Any oral would relatively clear the system, from a comparative point of view of other anabolics would clear the system relatively quick. So
right.
I could understand an oral use and potentially getting the timing a little bit wrong. The EQ I find a little bit odd.
He was coached by Hadi. No, he wasn't coached by Hadi.
Could it have been... Could it have just been a timing mistake? Very, very possible at the end of the day. I mean, if the coaches have... See, this is the thing as well, what you don't know is the athlete, and it happens both ways of this, athletes will take on themselves to do anabolics.
Yeah.
Without telling their coaches. And if they have a lack of knowledge, they can very easily mess themselves up. And he is a relatively young lad. Or if it's coach-driven... because there's definitely plenty of cases of coaches designing and managing anabolic use within their teams.
Sure.
Then you'd expect the timing to be a little bit better. So if this is something he's taken on himself, it could literally just be down to the fact that he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, which I would highly doubt, like at this level. But that said, another note from this article I was reading.
Okay, so
it says the anti-doping program of Tokyo Olympics in 2021 caught 6 athletes in the official games period, and they had 6,200 samples taken. So out of 6,200, only 6 people were caught in 2021. That's just it's crazy to me to think they were all that good. You know what I mean?
You suddenly broke.
Oh, I lost you. I lost you for a minute. You're back.
Yeah, internet. Yeah, internet's gone a bit weird.
Okay. What were you going to say, though?
Right. Yeah, now that's... the other thing side of this is, so the 2012 Olympic Games, the London Olympic Games, there were 2,000 medical exemptions submitted for people to use banned substances under some form of medical need.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot more. This is a big, a lot deeper dig than we're going to do here.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, the Russians, they've run state doping programs, and they would manage they would use in the off season,
right,
and then stop and go into the comps clean. So they would pass all the drug testing, but as we've seen from studies and stuff, that off-season use still gave them an advantage. Yeah. But you've also got to remember that there's sections of these games and teams that are very under-financed. So I can't remember the sport, but I caught an article this morning. Flavor Flav of Public Enemy fame, I think it's him, I might be wrong, but I think it's him, has personally financed one of the Olympic teams.
What?
One of the subdivisions. Because he found that the athletes were having to work 2 jobs to fund their Olympic event.
Yeah. Water polo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and too, let's see. Flavor Flav helps pay rent for Olympic track and field athlete from Raleigh. How about that?
So, if you've got subdivisions of national teams, particular sports that are very poorly financed,
yeah,
then they're not going to have big coaching structures that can manage what they do and support them in all the information, and they're going to have to operate quite independently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a strong chance, if you're coming from a country where the sport you do isn't particularly popular or isn't particularly got a lot of financial backing, some of these guys might very much be out on a limb on their own and just doing their own thing. They're still the best in their country at what they do, but they just don't have a big financial network to support that sport in that country, and therefore they're pretty much one-man bands on their own. I mean, the from the British point of view, the big famous one would be Eddie the Eagle, who was the skier, because we didn't have a ski team, and he was shit. He was absolutely garbage. But because we had nobody else, he got picked for the team.
Yeah.
And that actually, I believe, that actually changed the rules in the Olympic Games, that you had to create a certain standard before you could qualify to represent your country, because, think about it, Africa doesn't have a ski team.
Right.
So they could, anyone could technically represent their country as a ski team because they don't have anyone else for it. So you'd be the best in the country. We
should totally take advantage of that, Dave. Me and you. We could get some, advertisement for the podcast and stuff like that. It'd be good.
What we do in pie eating.
Yeah, the Olympic pie eating contest. Yeah, it looks like he helped a woman who was a track and field athlete pay her rent, and then it was the women's water polo team that he sponsored. That's crazy. Shout out to Flavor Flav. But we should probably get back on track with our regular content. I just wanted to bring that up because we've got somebody popped for D-ball and apparently EQ, though I don't think either of us really think that's the whole version of the story.
Yeah, they do seem strange drug choices. I'll definitely say that. They don't seem to be what you would typically go for in that scenario.
Yeah. So we had one of our listeners, and it was a guy from Patreon. He had asked us, he said, hey, what do you guys suggest as an oral-only cycle? He said, I can't be bringing no injectable compounds into my house. And all of that stuff. And I don't know what his deal is. Jake, I don't know what your deal is, but apparently he can't be bringing those things into his home. What are our thoughts on this idea of an oral-only cycle? And is it a viable way to make gains? And what would we suggest?
From a process of getting drugs into the body, in the 3 formats you can actually put anabolics into your body. You've got gel, you've got oral, you've got injectable. Gel's the worst bioavailability wise. Oral is the second worst, and injectable is the most efficient.
When you say gel, you mean like topical?
Yeah. So from that point of view, obviously orals are the ideal. No. There is much more efficient ways of putting drugs in your body. You'll get better results from an injectable cycle, and you bypass the stress on the liver, and you bypass the stomach potential stress that you're going to create from taking an oral.
Yeah.
But they are convenient. Not everybody's comfortable with injecting. Not everybody's in a circumstances where they can inject. You'd be surprised how many males, and particularly males, use anabolics without their partners knowing. It's something that crops up quite regular when we do blood tests for people and stuff like that, especially if they come for bloods with their partner. They won't mention what they're doing, and then when they leave, I'll get a text saying, by the way, I'm on XYZ, but I couldn't say it in front of the missus.
Wow, no kidding.
And then you also get the scenario where people work in an environment where injectables aren't viable. So a typical example was somebody who works offshore.
Yeah.
You know, they can't, or somebody who works like Australia down the mines and stuff, they can't really have those drugs in that environment because they would lose their jobs if they ever got caught with them.
Yeah.
So then again, orals, easy. You can put them in a vitamin tablet. No one knows they're different. You know, they're a lot simpler. So they have their place. Are they the ideal? No. But they do have their place. There is compromises with them. One being the limitations of the dose you can actually use, because we are limited to how much you can take in an oral format because of the stress it's going to cause on the stomach and the liver.
Yeah.
Can you grow off them? Yes. And particularly if you're fairly new into your steroid cycling period.
Yeah.
And then it effectively boils down to three aspects, I suppose. Do they aromatize or not? So are they DHT based or do they aromatize? And how stressful they are will govern how long you can use them for. Most people will start out with D-bol, good all-round drug, not overly limited on duration because it will convert to estrogen, so you are getting estrogen. When you start looking at DHTs like Anavar and Winstrol and drugs like that, the problem in part there is that they don't convert to estrogen, and they suppress your natural production. Now, that compound's going to replace your requirement for testosterone, but it's not going to replace your requirement for estrogen.
Yeah.
So you get a limitation in that scenario of how long you can use for, just for the fact that at some point you're going to have no estrogen left. And that is a concern. Other than that, then you're down to the drugs that are super stressful, like Halo. Estrol can be a bit that way as well. And those are compounds that you have minimal exposure to just because of the stress factors. But they have a place. And, I mean, if you wanted to look at the sort of drug pyramid from a point of view of effectiveness, I'd say down the end of the pyramid is SARMS. They're okay, but you're not going to break any records. Then you're getting into your orals, and then you're getting into your injectables.
Dusty made an interesting point. I had never noticed this before because I haven't worked with a lot of guys on SARMs. He told me that he's had a number of circumstances where he's worked with a young guy who's never done an actual, like, quote unquote real cycle, but they've done a number of SARM cycles. And he said, and then they go to real steroids. He's like, they don't get that same kick that you would expect from your first cycle because they've already spent so much time kind of messing around with SARMs and getting their bodies used to, like, basically higher androgens without really getting the results from them. So then, they finally think like, oh, I'm going to go to the real deal now, but they don't get quite the impact. I could totally see that if you were messing around with enough, like, kind of less effective SARM compounds, at less effective dosages, and then you go to the real thing. I could see that as a downfall. Duration is always going to be the limit on an oral cycle. And at the end of the day, no matter what you do, no matter what kind of results you get, you're going to want to probably end up doing a little bit more next time. And so that first cycle, I think it's all fine and good. Let's say you do my first cycle, for instance, we talked about this before, 15 milligrams of D-bol for 4 weeks. I put on 20 pounds and I kept 10 of it. Like, it's crazy, but I was definitely like early on in bodybuilding too at the time. I didn't have nearly, I didn't have a good physique yet, so it was easy to build and maintain. But from there, you're only going to want to go up. And now, are we going to start stacking multiple orals? Are we going to start extending the length of use? That's where my concern for like liver health would come in, is not that first cycle, but what are you going to do down the road to maintain and build off of that, Yeah,
they definitely without doubt have limitations. You could, with a DHT-based drug, I would say 6 to 8 weeks is your limit from a chemical point of view, not even considering either stomach stress or liver stress. With a conversion like Debol, you could probably stretch that to sort of into the 10-week, but then you're starting to have concerns around how stressed is the liver getting. No, it's just disinterested anyway, Brandon.
You read that too?
Yeah.
Brandon said, Scott's fancy new camera, it's the same camera I always use, quality makes him look especially disinterested whenever Dave is talking. Okay, let's try. I'll go ahead. Keep talking, Dave.
Okay. But yeah, there's always going to be a limitation to exposure, and there's always going to be a limitation to dose. And that's unavoidable.
Are you done? Are you done talking to you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do I have that look on my face? Is that the way I always look at you?
You look at me with complete hatred and disinterest 90% of the time, but it's fine. I get it. I understand.
You're used to that. All right.
Yeah, just wait till you come to the UK and nobody's there to pick you up from the airport. I wonder why.
Thank you for tuning in, and if we are providing value to you today, let me encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell. We have several bodybuilding podcasts that come out each week. What else do we have here? Oh, here's a comment. Great show today. Really enjoy listening to Dave. Can't believe Scott's 57. Wow. Oh, there were so many comments. Oh, there's another one. Okay. Oh man, they keep going. I guess I screen capped all of these comments.
We have to start behaving. I think we're gonna get bothered.
People don't understand sarcasm. I guess. I guess I'm too dry, Dave.
I genuinely do think it's a cultural thing. I think the Brits are a bit more accepted of just complete total piss taking, and the Americans struggle with it a little bit. I don't think they quite realise how far this shit goes.
All right. Question for Scott and Dave. When I inject I saw this. When I inject HCG and test, I feel dizzy. Is this normal? Generally, I realized that dizziness can be caused by HCG. Also, how long can you take HCG for? Can it be a permanent drug, or do I need to take some breaks between? Thanks in advance for the answer. Where do we start here, man?
I'll deal with the sensitivity issue and long-term use first. So
okay.
That's dose dependent. If you're supplementing HCG, say 250, 300 IU 3 times a week, you could run that forever and a day from a point of view, because what you're doing is trying to emulate and replicate LH's function when you're in a shutdown scenario. If you're running HCG at higher doses, let's say 1,000 or above, you're then going to start to desensitize the Leydig cells, and you will need a period of time where you take nothing for them to recover. As far as I'm aware, they do recover, but I'm not sure of any studies that show long-term HCG exposure. I know HCG protocols have been used in fertility treatments and as an alternative to TRT, and those doses are quite high. You're talking 1,500 plus 2-3 times a week as a pre-TRT treatment. So it obviously does occur in medical practice and seems to be relatively well tolerated for a period of time. But from what I know, most people eventually then move on to full TRT because the Leydig cells just eventually give up.
Yeah.
Now, from the dizziness point of view, I've never had anyone directly experience dizziness from HCG.
Yeah, me
I
either.
have seen people experience dizziness from injecting.
You mean like just the adrenaline of it kind of thing, or?
Like a stress response, yes.
Okay, I gotcha.
So I've seen that. So is it the HCG, or is it just the process of injecting that's creating anxiety, stress, that's causing you to be, and you can have things like a vascular response. I've probably said that wrong, where you get stress and anxiety can cause drops in low blood pressure.
Okay, yeah.
Which would cause lightheadedness and dizziness.
And fainting.
And that's very common that's usually an anxiety stress trigger.
Yeah.
So, in fact, somebody messaged me along these lines. I wonder if it's linked to this question about injecting and having that response. And would the injections cause it? And I said, the injections themselves don't cause it. It's the stress and anxiety that you're experiencing having to do an injection that causes it.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't gone that direction at all. I was thinking to myself, like, God, what's in your HCG if you're feeling dizzy every time you take it? But that would make sense, I suppose. How about this one?
Unless he's using insulin and doing huge doses.
Let's see. I tried Aromasin, but honestly, Aromasin is so weak for me that I must be taking 100 milligram tablets probably to sort me out. I tried Aromasin 25 milligrams a day. How long can you take Arimidex for? And when can it be dangerous? I take 1 milligram every 2 days while on cycle. Usually I do 16 weeks of test of 600 to 750 every week. Test only cycles and then TRT. I feel I never stop taking Arimidex apart from when on TRT. Thanks for the education.
Negatives of Arimidex predominantly are based around HDL suppression.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say 16 weeks is excessive. It's used for much longer periods in people with cancer and stuff like that. So it's not that it can't be used for extended periods. But you do need to be aware of your HDL position and HDL management when using ADEX. Aromasin is a milder drug. The reason I favor Aromasin is because of its non-impact on HDL. But at the same time, it is only good for so much. And then there becomes a point when it's just not strong enough to manage the estrogen someone's producing, and you have to start looking at things like ADEX, which is a stronger. The other alternative to all this is potentially looking at how you structure your cycles and maybe look at pulling the test down and going for a non-aromatizing compound as a second product. I'm not talking about increasing your overall total dose, just changing part of that cycle plan to a DHT so you're producing less estrogen and therefore you have less reliance on an AI to manage that problem.
Yeah.
So that's a potential to look at. There may be reasons why you don't want to do that. I don't know enough about what's going on to say whether that's an option for you or not. But other than that, that would be my main option. The other thing as well is, I know Aromasin, going back a few years, Aromasin was always difficult to get genuine because there wasn't the demand for it. There seems to be a much stronger demand for it now, so it seems to be more genuine now. So there's always that to consider as well. Is the Aromasin you're getting legit?
Yeah.
But it is the milder end. I mean, when you look at AI or anti-estrogen drugs, Proviron's probably the weakest and mildest of them all. Then you've got Aromasin, then you've got ADEX, and then you start getting into letrozole and sledgehammers like that. Which really, if you're on letrozole, there's something major going on. If you get to a point where you need to run letrozole.
Yeah, I remember having issues with Aromasin during a contest prep cycle, and I thought, I'm going to use Aromasin now because it's better on my cholesterol. Years ago, it was probably 10, 15 years ago now, and I remember taking the Aromasin, and I was running a hefty dose of test too, like over a gram, I'm sure. I remember having that control gyno sensitivity, but by the next day it was coming back. Like there was a very quick like rebound. It was just barely enough. By comparison, if I were to use Arimidex, it seemed like I could get away with less Arimidex and more comfortably control estrogen with it. So I think when I start getting up into those higher dose cycles, I think I do generally lean more toward Arimidex for estrogen control.
No, I definitely. I mean, it's definitely a much stronger product. Yeah, I mean, I think Adex is about 86% efficient, roughly. I'm not sure what Aromasin is. I find Aromasin generally good for up to about 500 megatests, and then it may start to struggle a bit after that, depending on the person.
Okay.
True Nutrition, they're not only a retailer, they're also a manufacturer. They're actually making a lot of the products that you guys are already buying from other companies. So just think about it. You're going to cut out the middleman. The only thing you're going to miss out on is the fancy labels and the branding. Outside of that, you're getting the exact same high quality products, but you're getting it directly from the source. If you're going to pay for the price of highly branched cyclic dextrin, ensure that you're getting 25 grams per scoop, not of a mix of carbs, but just of highly branched cyclic dextrin. We can mix the other stuff in later, Use our code THINK, get some savings, plus it's like voting for us. It lets them know that you support what we're doing.
How about this, guys? He says, after I complete a 12-week test cycle, can I naturally rest for 4 weeks instead of doing TRT or PCT before I start another cycle? So basically, he wants to run a cycle and then stop all shots, no PCT, take 4 weeks off, and then start another cycle up.
So from a hormonal point of view, I would suspect, depending on the dose of your cycle, that your levels wouldn't get to low end until about 4 weeks post-cycle.
Yeah.
If you're running, let's spitball this, let's say you're running 500 mg testosterone and anthe, that's roughly going to put you at about 100 nmol, slightly more, slightly less, depending on the person, good quality, blah, 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 blah. So let's say a nice clean 100, 10.5 day half-life, so you're 50 mmol after 10 days. At the 3 week point, you're 25 mmol, and at the 4.5 week point, you're 12.5 mmol, so you're now creeping into, TRT triggering ranges.
Yeah.
So that 4 week break, your test levels probably wouldn't even get low enough for you to feel the impact. But going back on cycle after a 4 week break, in my opinion, is way too quick.
It's not really a break. It's not really a break,
Yeah, so so that's your personal choice. My advice would be take a longer break, let your body get some downtime. If you're getting a PCT, you're going to need time to do the PCT, and you're going to need time to be drug-free post, so that is quite an extended period. You're probably looking at 10, 12 weeks. If you're getting a TRT, you can definitely reduce that period, but you need to let your levels come down before you start the TRT. Otherwise, you will end up being elevated for a couple of months, and that bridge won't be the bridge you thought it was from a point of view of reducing stress factors on the body.
Meaning, stop all shots after the cycle, let your levels clear, and then start the TRT versus stop all shots and start TRT right away. I've had a number of clients lately who hadn't really understood that concept and immediately planned to go just straight at, put the 200 milligram shot down and pick up the 100 milligram shot, the next day.
And I've seen bloods 2 months post-cycle where people have gone straight on TRT.
Yeah.
And they're still sitting double natural range. Their levels just haven't fully come down yet. Now, bloods help when it comes to seeing how you are from a point of view of health and moving forward. But they don't show everything. They don't show some of the stress levels. They don't show. And I found from both personal experience and with clients that a good break period, particularly a break period where you get fit and healthy, will always result in a very productive next cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when we've gone off a productive cycle and tried to go into another cycle too quickly, that second cycle has always been diminished from a point of view of results.
Watch Under Construction 3.
So I would recommend that your downtime period, just does need to be a period where you get as fit and healthy as possible. And this isn't really from a harm reduction aspect. This is actually from then you'll get the best benefits out of your next cycle from a growth and progressive period, because you need to be fit and healthy to grow. Yep. And unfortunately, the use of anabolics and growing puts a large amount of stress on your body, which diminishes that, irrespective of what you do. That's always going to happen. I remember UC1, that first cycle was phenomenal because I'd had so long off and spent so much time getting fit because I was looking at competing. When I went into the second cycle, I didn't have a big enough break. And even though the doses were higher, the second cycle was less productive because I hadn't spent enough time away from drugs and let my body fully recover.
Yeah. And looking at, so he had another follow-up question, but based off of this, I'm going to say that he has not committed to TRT yet, because he says, if I decide to do TRT plus cycles, how long would it be on TRT before starting another cycle? So we already did answer that, but by reading that tells us like he's not fully committed to TRT yet. So he still could come off and recover his natural levels. But if you were to stay on 12 weeks, then 4 weeks off, then 12 weeks on, you basically just ran a 24, basically close to a 30-week cycle, you know?
It's difficult for someone in their 20s, and I would have been exactly the same at that age, not having the experience I have now, to grasp this concept that actually having time away from the drugs is going to make you grow bigger and better long term. And it's a difficult thing to wrap your head around, and we were discussing this off camera before on. When you get into this world, unfortunately, your anxiety and your paranoia about the way you look and how your relationship with your physique mentally gets screwed. And it's pretty unavoidable. It's going to happen to some extent. And then you start getting paranoid about, well, if I'm off cycle, I'm losing size, then I'm not who I should be. And inevitably, when you come off cycle, there's going to be a few pound drop because you're going to drop some water, you're going to drop some glycogen. But we panic. I've done it myself. I'm sure you have in the early days, where I've gone, oh shit, I'm losing all my size, I need to get back on, and then end up on a TRT or you end up on a high TRT, and then by the time you come to doing your next, you're just not as productive, and the solution always is, I need to take more. And it's very difficult to grasp this concept. Actually, what I need to do is not so much take less, but have this bigger period of taking less, so I'm fresh and ready to exploit the taking more bit.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more to it too. It's also related to your training and to your food, right? Like, are you still getting stronger? I mean, if you're 10, 12 weeks in and you're still getting stronger, you're still making good progress, I might just extend that current cycle a little bit longer. You know what I mean? Another 2 weeks, another 3 weeks, something like that. If you are a TRT guy, I'd definitely go to, say, 16 weeks. That's not a problem at all, you know?
But then the opposite of that is if you're 7, 8 weeks in and it's all going to shit, don't be scared of stopping and coming off.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You walk away, refresh, come back another day and get more out of it. Don't flog a dead horse, because I've done that. I've sat there. This is my plan. This is what I'm sticking to. And it's like, oh man, I should have finished this cycle 6 weeks ago. Because all I've had is 6 weeks of problems. Yeah,
if things are stagnant, the sooner you can kind of get off and retool, the sooner you can figure out what it's going to take to grow and get back on, you know?
And sometimes it's just a build-up of stress from the drug exposure or a build-up of stress from the training exposure. And it's just a case of, I just need some time away.
Yeah.
From drugs. I just need some time of not hammering my system with drugs.
Here's a good one. Says, I have a question for the next episode. Is there a benefit to switching anabolic compounds every 10 weeks or so in the off season? I heard some meatheads talking about it, saying that the anabolics have diminishing effect after some time. Thanks, longtime viewer of the show. Thanks, Ben.
There's a small smidgen of truth in that, but not in something. I followed that protocol for my first cycle. Every 4 to 6 weeks, I changed the compound.
Yeah.
And I stayed on for a long time, and I did make continuously half decent progress. But my overall dosing was, by today's standards, relatively low. It wasn't low, but I kept under a gram total at all times.
Okay.
Regularly used a Blaster HCG. I don't think that actually did much, but that was what I was following. There is something in that every compound has a set operational mechanism. It works in a certain way. They all engage with the androgen receptor for simple argument, but if you imagine a steroid is like a multi-pin plug, and when it plugs into the receptor, each steroid has certain pins that are strong and certain pins that are weak, and that in a way changes the signal specific to that steroid.
Yeah.
So by changing anabolic, you do, to an extent, change the stresses and downstream effects of that drug. So you're still plugging into the same receptor. There's nothing changing there, but the downstream impacts can change slightly. And as a result, yes, you can get a little bit of a boost, pickup, however you want to term it, by changing a compound. But you're still going to be creating overall stresses, and it's still not something that's a long-term solution for most people. This will depend on dose and will depend on choice of drugs and other factors in your life, but I still very much swear by time away is the best way to create long-term progress and continued progress through anabolics.
I've enjoyed, in my cycling, I had enjoyed running a couple longer compounds in the background. Let's say test and EQ. Okay, so let's say it's a 16-week cycle. Test EQ all the way through. First 8 weeks, maybe 300 NPP. And then the last 8 weeks, switch that to 200 tren. And I think for me, and this is not speaking to the actual drugs themselves, there was a psychological benefit to, oh, now the trend's in. Oh, now I'm feeling stronger from this. Oh, I'm looking harder. You know what I mean? There was that motivational factor of switching compounds. So completely taking it in a different direction. I think that when you add something in different, there's going to be like more motivation to be like, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to hit it hard, take advantage of this new compound. You know what I'm saying?
When I design cycles, I design progressive cycles. So we start relatively low.
Yeah.
Then we bring it up to what would be our medium dose for a period. And then we bring it up to our peak dose for the back end of the cycle. And I do that for two reasons. One is to maintain a level of progression.
Yeah.
Which keeps people motivated. And the other thing is the psychological side of it, that you're adding something new in. So all of a sudden you're almost starting a new cycle.
Yeah.
And the enthusiasm that comes with that. So yeah, I like that approach from a point of view of progression. Starting lower than you actually would normally, but then finishing possibly slightly higher than you would normally.
Okay.
I mean, like you were saying about the change, you technically upped the dose, even though your milligrams went down because you brought in a much stronger androgen.
Yeah, possibly, you know.
So the androgenic load increased even as the actual milligrams went down by 100 milligrams total a week.
Yeah.
And that's something you need to consider as well with your cycles is, one, your exposure to the harsher drugs, how long that's going to be for, but the fact that certain compounds are going to yield better results because they are effectively stronger. You know, 200 milligram of Primo against 200 milligram of Tren. There ain't a person on the planet going to argue that Primo is going to do the same shit that Tren's going to do.
There might be.
Well, there might be, but I would strongly disagree with that argument, but
I would too.
Everyone to their own.
Yes.
This is as it stands, not an exact science, unfortunately. There are still a lot of things that we're not sure about.
Yeah. All right. So this we have here. How about this one? Another one about me being 57. Okay.
Just go with it, Scott. I'd just go with it. You know what I
I'm
mean?
57, guys. I look really good for my age. I appreciate it. Let's see. Question around test for the next podcast. I never heard of this before. Can a nethate increase more estradiol than cypionate or sustanon? My estradiol is getting too increased when on a nethate compared to sustanon. I never tried cypionate yet.
Sust, I would say potentially yes, because you've got different esterifications in Sust, and therefore you've got different rates of conversion and different half-lives all playing into the factors. So a 200 milligram dose of Sust is not equal to a 200 milligram dose of Test-Nth from a point of view of actual testosterone. There could also be the factor playing in of how the drugs aromatize in the body, in the sense of governed by their half-life. So SIP I would expect to be very similar to Nth, whereas Sust I could see that being quite different, yes. But the other factor as well is because I've never found a UGL Sust to be correct.
Oh yeah, you've mentioned that before. Like, they don't have all four of the proper esters at the right dosing, right?
Yeah, so there's the other thing. Is your Sust actually what you think it is?
Yeah.
Or is it not? And there's another argument completely there, but your estrogen levels could be affected by the fact that what you're taking is not actually quite where you think it is from a dose point of view. So the only way to really check that would be to look at your test levels against your estrogen levels with both compounds. But yeah, I could definitely see. I mean, I wouldn't have off the bat guessed that Nth would have brought more estrogen, but I could definitely see a difference between those two compounds just because of how the different esters play in Sust.
And I wonder what he's doing. Like, what's his situation? Is he bulking now? You know, you've brought up before, like, body fat. Is his body fat higher now on this cycle than it was before? Because all these drugs are going to have a different effect on our bodies depending on what we're doing. You know, what our body fat's like, what our nutrition is like, stuff like that. What's your sleep like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, heat.
Yeah?
I actually, something I only found out recently is heat actually increases the conversion of testoestrogen.
I'll be damned. I never heard of that. Why?
No, I didn't. I'm not sure. I haven't got to the bottom of what does it, but apparently high body temperature can increase the conversion of testoestrogen. Your diet has an influence on this.
Yeah.
You know, you start looking at phosphoestrogens and stuff like that in your diet. That has an impact on estrogen conversion because it's actually one of the things they recommend if you have low estrogen is to eat more soy product because it increases estrogen levels. Your sleep, like you said, your body fat levels. So estrogen can be influenced by quite a few things. So if the differences are mild, that could be environmental. If the differences are big, that's more likely to be drug-based.
Yeah. All right. Okay. What would you pick, either Masteron or Primo, with test, strictly as a mass builder, and at what ratio? And what's your thoughts on running test in Deca if you're 50? He's only ever run test cycles up to 400 milligrams. He's looking to maximize some muscle growth before age totally catches up with him. Well, at 57, let me tell you about my experience at 57, Dave. Let me start there.
Well, go on, man. I'm waiting.
If I were to pick one or the other, man, I am a much bigger fan of Masteron personally. And there's a few thoughts here. I think Primo's finding good. It really is. I like Masteron and Nethate. We can get the milligrams up higher. It's usually 200 milligrams per milliliter. Have you noticed, Dave, that Primo tends to be a more painful shot? Just a question, random side question.
It's not a drug I've used much of. One of the reasons being that availability when I was really using was it just was difficult to get hold of.
Yeah.
I don't have anything against Primo. I just think it's a bit limp.
Yeah,
I'm not. Of a better term,
I know people love it nowadays. It's not my biggest go-to.
See,
I would rely more on the test personally, and then I would increase enough Masteron to kind of let's take the test up to what you're comfortable with without creating a lot of side effects, and then push the milligrams up further with the Mast or really the Primo. I don't care. Like I guess I was trying to make a case for the Masteron, but if I'm really thinking about it, man, and somebody came to me and they're like, "Which should I take?" I'd be like, "Which do you want to take?" Really, between the two of them.
I think Mast is a much better anabolic for Mast over Primo. I don't rate Primo for size, and I think your Primo ends up having to be ridiculously high in order to offset that.
I'm indifferent, man. I'm indifferent between Mast and Primo.
From what I'm seeing, blood work wise, Primo is a very effective anti-estrogen.
Yeah, okay.
And you potentially could get away with a ratio of less than 1-to-1 test to Primo for estrogen management of Primo. Masteron, for the most part, seems to act like a SERM. I have seen it lower estrogen in some people, but in the most part, people still have elevated estrogen levels, but they just don't have any side effects. They don't have any symptoms of that.
Yeah, I 2 years now, Dave. 3 years, 2-3 years of in-depth experiments with Mast and test. I am not seeing Masteron act as an AI. I'm still seeing people have issues with estrogen and still getting side effects that require control. Like it's just, I'm seeing it in some cases, but Mast E as an AI is not nearly as effective as, say, Arimidex. Not even by a long shot in my experience.
And I would probably say Mast to test ratio of you. I mean, I don't like ratios because I think it really should be individual to each person. But if you were looking one as a start point, I'd probably go 1-to-1.
Yeah, low dose. I have people do really good if we're doing like 200 to 300 Mast along with an equal amount of test.
Yeah. The other now regarding Deca for an older man, don't have an issue with it whatsoever.
Yeah. He's done like 400 milligram test cycles. So where would you start that Deca?
That's his total dose.
Yeah, 400 milligram test cycles is what he's gone for. It looks like.
So I would say 300 test, 200 Deca, somewhere around that mark, or even 75 MPP Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yeah.
He could even combine all three, but it's going to mean quite a jump in his total dosage to what he's used to.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you're going to struggle to run 3 compounds and not be breaking 600-700 mg total.
Oh yeah, and that's like small doses of each. Then at that.
Yeah, and otherwise it just becomes pointless doing it.
Yeah. Let's see. I've got HGH 5 IU per day while already running 500 test, 120 tren alongside of that. After upping the HGH, I'm getting huge face pumps during the meal. It's very weird feeling, and I'm curious of your opinion. So I'm thinking like his jaws and stuff are getting all cramped up while he's eating. Have you ever gotten that? I've gotten that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have said it was from GH, but I've definitely got like jaw cramp from ramming stupid amounts of food in.
Yeah.
GH is going to increase water retention. It's one of the things it does, and as a result, your muscles are going to be fuller, and that's all your muscles, including stuff around the jaw and hands. And I mean, it's one of the reasons we get the hand pains. You know, it's water and swelling around such things. So it doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I find 5 quite a high dose relative to everything else you're doing. I'd be more tempted to go every other day. That will offset some of the problems you're experiencing, or just go a lower total dose per day. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I wouldn't say it's common, but it has, and I have seen it before.
How about red yeast rice for cholesterol on and off cycle? I've personally never experimented with it.
I haven't. Some people I've spoke to swear by it and say it's really, really good. It's definitely not a negative, so you're not going to lose anything by putting it in there. It can only be a positive. How effective it is in an anabolic scenario, I'm just honestly not sure. I've never seen any data around it.
I should be getting my lab work back here any day now. I did labs what was it, last Thursday. So I should be seeing my results pretty soon. I'm excited to see how things are looking. You know, I've been on all my health. I take a load of health supplements, Dave. You know, so I'm curious to see if there's been any benefit to any of that. I take a high dose of ubiquinol. My cholesterol's been pretty damn good the last few times I've had it read, but I'll be curious because I've been on 400 milligrams of ubiquinol, which is expensive. It's like $50 a month, but I find that it's really good for me for energy production, so I've stuck with it. How about you? Do you use any ubiquinol, or are you allowed to use that?
Supplementation wise, I'm absolutely terrible. I really am. Literally citrus bergamot, some krill oil.
Do you take citrus bergamot?
Yeah.
So I'm on that now too. I hadn't used it in the past, but I've been using it for about 3 months now. So I'm curious to see if I see any benefit to that.
My lipids currently are pretty decent, but I'm terrible for supplementation. No, I've got nothing against it. I'm just personally really bad at doing it. That's all.
Are you still doing your cardio? I know you mentioned last week you were doing cardio.
I have started it again. Yes, I am still doing it. Yes, I still do hate it. Yes, my arse is very sore at the moment from that fucking saddle. But it is every morning. Well, for the most part, every morning it's getting done.
You're using the Peloton?
Yeah. I really. To be honest, I should try and get a discount from the buggers, but it's the only form of cardio I've found I can maintain.
Because it tells you, like, what does it do? It's like changes and stuff.
Yeah, it's just because I can go on every day. I can select a ride with an instructor. I don't particularly have any sort of relationship in a sense with the instructor, but it just means there's someone there talking to me.
Is it a real person? Broadcasting this from somewhere?
You can do it live, or you can do it as a recorded session, and there's thousands of sessions.
Okay.
But so the two things I like about it is, one, there's someone there to distract me.
Yeah.
And some of them just talk absolute bollocks about all sorts of shite. So it is literally just distracting.
Really? They're talking about like their lives and stuff, or what?
Yeah, to an extent, yeah. And then the other thing is that the Peloton has an auto resistance setting.
Yeah.
So I can get on and just not have to think about anything. It will change the resistance, and I just do as they tell me.
Okay.
And that works for me. Where if I was getting on a bike and doing 20-30 minutes of self-maintained,
yeah,
I'd be pissing about with tension and all sorts. Where this way, I'm forced to do harder sections, but I also have easier sections that come in when the program feels it's necessary, and that just keeps me on some form of track.
You know, people listen to our show while they're doing cardio.
Yeah, and I understand why. I mean, you can also do other things with the Peloton from the point of view of music and stuff like that if you want to, but I just stick an instructor on based on the time I've got, and it's either 20 or 30 minutes, and off I poddle.
All right, let's give people some motivation, some emotional encouragement, Dave. If they're doing their cardio now, like what? Give them something. Like tell them something positive. To keep them going.
I hate cardio.
But somebody else. They're listening to us right now, Dave. They're doing their cardio. What are you gonna tell them to keep them going? Come on, one more step, something like that.
The sooner you get it done, the better you can get off and do something enjoyable.
I guess that works. Do you, on that note, do you have any wisdom, Uncle Dave's wisdom for us today? Oh, look at that. We got somebody who's one of our listeners. She's on a spin bike right now.
I sympathize for you.
Watching us live on a spin bike.
Do I have any words of wisdom? Do I have any words of wisdom?
Dave obviously has been preparing. He wrote this down. He's just going through his notes.
I've done this 2 weeks on the trot now. I thought of something. I thought, right, I need to remember that because I couldn't write it down what I was. And then it's come to here and I've completely forgotten about it. Yes, I do, actually, yes.
Okay.
So, first, I may have done this one before a little bit. So the first thing I'm stealing is of Tom Hanks, and it is effectively, if you're in a shitty time, it is not a permanent state. It will pass.
That's true.
If you're in a good time, it's not a permanent state. It will pass.
That's unfortunately true.
We have to experience all emotion in order to grow and be able to find true inner peace and true happiness. If you don't have a rainy day, you don't appreciate the sunshine. If you've never been miserable, you don't appreciate happiness. If you've not experienced sadness, you don't know what joy is, and vice versa. If you don't experience pain, you don't know. If you don't experience stress, you don't know what calm is. You don't know what the opposite of any of these, what we class as negative emotions, is.
Yeah.
Because you need both sides. Life is very much about balance. When you try and tip life one way or the other, it will swing back at you.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn. Enjoy is probably the wrong word, but you've got to learn how to get through the bad times and use them as tools of learning so you can then experience in the good times. It's never all going to be good, but it's never all going to be bad. And sometimes when we get the bad times, we get so stuck in that negative rut, we stop seeing actually the good stuff that is still there.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
And it's very difficult when you're in a rut not to just look at, the walls surrounding you and forget to actually look up and see that the sky is still there. And life is still positive. We just need to work towards getting more positive with it. A lot of this is mindset stuff. It's, one of the things that a lot of people growing up now struggle with is they struggle to learn about how to cope with emotion because they've been protected from the negative emotions growing up. It's like, nobody loses, you get a participation medal. Well, no, that isn't life. You've got to lose, because if you don't lose, you don't learn how to cope with loss, and then you don't learn how to use that as a positive motivation to spur yourself to be more successful.
Yeah.
So the shit is necessary. It's what builds us as people.
I'll go with that.
And you just got to try and step back and I wouldn't say you can't make everything positive. And if you set out to make everything positive, you will fail because it's impossible. So by trying to be overly positive, you set yourself up to fail. But what you need to do is accept the negativity for what it is and then see how you can grow from that.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. There was I've heard too, there was a study done that had shown people who are depressed will generally remember the dark times in their lives versus people who are happy will generally remember the happy times, which it makes sense. Like if I'm not feeling good, I'm more likely to connect with those other, my life has always been crap. This happened. Where if you're feeling good, you're not wanting to think about the bad times. So it's interesting the way that our current perspective can color the way we think about our lives and reflect on our lives. You know what I mean?
No, very much so. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, there's old advice about sleeping on it and making a decision in the morning with a fresh head when you're not emotionally charged about the subject that you were looking at.
Yeah.
And reflection is a great thing. I use it a lot. I reflect a hell of a lot on what I do and experiences, and just look at it from a point of view of, can I learn from that? Did I handle that right? What were my alternatives? Not to a point where it's paranoid over it, but just a healthy sort of, right, yeah, okay, that's what I did. Am I happy with that? Am I not happy with that? How can I improve and stuff like that? But it is a difficult balance to look at yourself objectively and not add a negative or a positive spin to it.
Yeah.
And like I say, when you've had a shitty day, everything becomes shit. And, just don't be scared to just take yourself out of that environment for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Sit somewhere neutral, somewhere where you can be quiet and just whatever it is. Have a smoke, have a coffee, have a drink, whatever you do, and just reset yourself. And it's like, we've all done it. We've all set up, jumped out of bed, stubbed the toe, tripped over the cat, spilled the coffee, and then it just starts to be a catalogue of fuck-ups. And all you need to do is stop, step back. Right, come on, let's restart, because I'm creating all these problems because I'm just not watching what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, just step back and right, just calm myself down, take 10 minutes to just decharge, de-stress, and go, right, let's start again.
People really enjoyed you on the last show, by the way, Dave. They were like, Dave needed that vacation. He seems more, like, invigorated now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we do these little segments, and I don't for any section pretend to know everything or even a fraction of things.
Yeah.
It's a lot of this is stuff that I do with myself. It's stuff that I try to do with myself. Before going away, I was very much on a bit of I wouldn't say a negative spiral, but I definitely wasn't seeing as many positives as there were around me.
Yeah.
You know, go away, recharge, de-stress a little bit, come back, and then you sort of look up and go, you know what, actually, gosh, yeah, I've got a lot of crap to be thankful for.
Yeah. I like hearing that too. It's true, man. And if we can stop and create a gratitude list, I think that's a big thing. Even I've told clients that are in contest prep, because you get to a point where like you just feel like garbage. But if you can stop and come up with like 3 reasons that you're grateful, in that case, like grateful for bodybuilding, you know, then it's hard to keep that chip on your shoulder, you know.
You know, as a coach, and I'm sure you can relate to this. There gets points where clients can be very demanding, or you feel they're very demanding. That might be the wrong terminology, actually. You feel they're very demanding.
Yeah.
And you can almost get to a point where resentful's still strong a word, but it can get irritating. And it's easy to forget, you know, actually, I should be thankful for every client I've got, and I should be thankful having every opportunity I've got with those clients, because one, I can help them achieve a goal that they want to achieve, which is always a positive thing.
Right.
And so, but also, you know, let's not bullshit about this. There's a financial element in this as well that's rewarding, that allows me to do things that I want to do.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to get very negative about work, particularly if it's a job that doesn't particularly inspire you. I mean, to be honest, generally coaching does. But there's always going to be those days where it's just like, you know what, this is like pulling teeth today.
Yeah.
But that gives you the opportunity to do other things. Yeah. And you've just got to remember that, you know, that this might not be the ideal, and not every day is going to be the ideal, but I'm thankful for this because this allows me to do X, Y, Z. It allows me to feed my family. It allows me to have a roof. It allows me to sit on a podcast with some weird American bloke that's 57 and talk bollocks for a couple of hours every week.
Did you hear that, guys? It almost sounded like Dave said that he likes me. That's as close as I think as we're going to get. Speaking of...
Damn right, bitch.
Speaking of making money, Ruth messaged us. She said, hello from Dublin. Where in Ireland does Eval operate from?
We have a clinic in Elite Fitness in Lisbon.
Okay.
Which is unfortunately more Belfast end than Dublin end.
Oh, okay. And
it's not a million miles apart. It is commutable, but it's not a 5-minute drive either.
All right. And Jake, I want to give a shout out to Strom through Jake. He said, I used red yeast rice combined with Strom, OCT, and Lipid Max. They kept my LDL in range on 400 test, 200 Primo, 200 Mast. He said bloods were done at 14 out of 16 weeks. So there we go. You guys can check that out through Strom. Dave.
Yep.
Dave. Thanks for joining us as always. Guys, thanks for tuning into the podcast. Check out truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there. Go to evalbloodanalysis.com. You can get your lab work done by Dave. And for the next 10 people that contact Eval, you'll get your lab work absolutely free. There, screw you, Dave. That's repayment.
I'm actually offering some free blood tests, free bloodlets tomorrow at Planet Fitness in Tregeega. Planet Fitness in Tregeega.
Planet Fitness?
South Wales. Planet Fitness, yeah.
It's not the Planet Fitness like the chain, is it?
No, it's an independent gym, but very good, very big gym in South Wales. And we're starting to do a monthly clinic there. So we're doing some staff training tomorrow evening, 4:30 to 5.
I could use a bloodlet. If I could get there, I would totally take advantage of that.
So I've only got a couple of slots, but anyone who happens to be from that area or train at that gym that wants a free bloodlet, you can get one tomorrow.
All right, guys, and check out Strom Sports Nutrition. In the comments, when you make a order, tell them that Dave and Scott said hi. Right? Something like that. We'll see you guys.
Something like that.